This podcast is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute professional medical advice. The information presented on this podcast are my own personal views, opinions, and summaries of research. Always consult your physician regarding any medical concerns, conditions, or treatments. Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for coming back for episode 12 of It's Not You, It's Me, a PMDD podcast. I am sorry it's taken me a little longer than usual to put out a new episode. Life and work happened. We got engaged. My fiance had 2 surgeries. We're moving at work. Other family stuff happened. So there's been a lot. And then there's the added challenge of finding some place quiet to do my recordings, which are pretty limited to me. So I need to work with what I can find. Currently, I'm sitting in my car recording. That's one of the beauties of, podcasting nowadays and having apps for that, because you can pretty much do it anywhere. So here we are. It's a quiet space I've been able to find. So hopefully I can get this. It'll sound okay, because I've really been wanting to get out new episodes soon. Just time is just crazy. It has a way of just getting away. So, but here I am. I'm back. I'd like to first start in talking about the news regarding the classification of PMDD in the ICD, meaning that PMDD is now an international diagnosis. And I feel like there's a lot in that, so I wanted to unpack it just a little bit. So the ICD is the International Standard Diagnostic Tool for Epidemiology, Health Management, and Clinical Purposes. And its full official name is, let me take a deep breath here, International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Health-Related Problems. In working around healthcare in my personal life, I've heard of the ICD and I knew there were codes associated with it or involved with it, but I thought they were only related to billing. And that was about as far as my knowledge went. So I went researching a little more about it, and I learned that the official classifications of diseases had started in the year 1900 by 2 Frenchmen in Paris. So thank you for them for starting that. And the codes created by the ICD also allow researchers to collect and track data from patients worldwide, such as being able to pull data on how prevalent something like cystic fibrosis is in a certain area or age group, region. And up until now, I think the DSM was more associated in discussions with PMDD, but now we have the ICD, so let's touch on a few differences between those. So the DSM is revised more frequently, whereas the ICD has typically had longer gaps between revisions, though I'm not sure why that is. I don't know if it's just a stipulation, every X amount of years, we're going to review everything, see if anything needs to be changed. I couldn't find any information on that. And the DSM was first introduced in 1952 following the military's desire to have a useful classification of various mental disorders. Now, one difference, among the others, is that DSM allows criteria for diagnosis of disorders. It outlines it, it spells it out. If this exists, or, these are the symptoms that must be present, much like PMDD, we're well aware. But the ICD allows a clinician to make decisions regarding diagnosis, so it doesn't spell it out quite specifically like the DSM does. And the DSM is also primarily used by psychiatrists, whereas the ICD is intended for all practitioners, not just psychology. Another difference is the DSM is primarily used in the US, whereas the ICD is used worldwide. And I feel like that last note is why this is such a huge step with PMDD. Now that it's recognized worldwide, it has its own code. Assuming that the code will actually be used, researchers can then see how prevalent it is and where and what age group, and pull all this other patient data to look at that maybe holds a key into why this happens. But hopefully that will lead to more research. So yes, this is a huge win in the pursuit of understanding PMDD. And if you want to know a little bit more, IAPMDD, I'm sorry, I always get that tongue-tied. IAPMD has a video on their YouTube that explains it a little more, and you can find it from their channel or by searching ICD and PMDD. So now let's get to the book. I wanted to offer my review and kind of talk about the PMDD and Relationships, Living on a Prayer, Living with PMDD. Yes, that's the whole title. Written by Leanna Leverance in 2015. And from what I've read on her bio, like, I like to know who's written the book, especially like when it comes to healthcare, like what kind of background or experiences they have. And from what I read on her bio, she's more of a fiction writer, but she did write 2 books about PMDD, this being one of them. The other focuses more on relationships, and I have that one as well. I've just not gotten to reading it yet. And one thing I really, really liked about this book was that it was written in a casual tone. Like, just if you were to sit down with a friend and they were to talk about their experiences with PMDD or really any condition, like, it's just very, like, approachable, easily readable, and I really like that. It wasn't super science heavy, not filled with a lot of scientific terminology or medical terminology. The only thing I wasn't really feeling, and this is just totally a personal preference and wouldn't even discourage me from recommending the book to others, was the little religious references sprinkled throughout. I consider myself to be agnostic, which is neither believing nor disbelieving in God, higher power. And I was raised Catholic, but I feel like I just don't know. Like, now that I'm in my adulthood and, have more of the mental capacity to think about things and all that, I just don't know, basically. But yeah, I mean, it's not like that turned me off from the book, and I wouldn't rate it as being anything negative just because of that. People are free to believe whatever they want to believe, and we can still have a mutual respect of one another as people and of each other's experiences. Like, we can still respect that and get along and listen despite, whatever religious preferences you had. But, that being said, it was really easy to read. And I also wanted to mention that the author is not a fan of contraceptives or antidepressants. As you may already know, some of the side effects of antidepressants can be things like anxiety and depression, which are already symptoms of PMDD. So why would you want to take something to treat a condition which in turn may cause those exact same conditions as a side effect? I mean, it makes sense. I get it. I get her perspective. And she does talk about a little bit about medications in the book, but if you're looking for something that's more explanatory about medicinal treatments and alternative treatments, this would probably not be the book for you. And she has the perspective too that you are, in talking about treatments, that you are a whole person. You're not just brain chemistry or imbalances. The book is split into 2 halves. The first half about the book is what you need to do for a healthy relationship, and the second half is what your partner can do. And the other author, like I mentioned, the other author's book is specifically for partners, but she does include parts in this book targeted at partners too. So both will be helpful if you are a partner of someone with PMDD and want to get a better understanding. And this book is helpful for people with PMDD and those wanting to learn more about it. But I also feel like it would be helpful just for anyone, whether you have PMDD or not, to know more about what it's like to be like inside of the person with PMDD, like inside the brain, and know the thoughts and kind of hear the irrational kind of crap that goes through our brains when we're having our PMDD episodes. So the first step the author says is to have awareness that PMDD is a part of you. And I feel like that goes back to something that a lot of people have said in different ways, which could probably be like a mantra for PMDD sufferers, which is you don't have to be perfect. I don't know if anyone's a Marvel Avengers fan, but in the most recent movie Endgame, there's this one really nice part where Thor is talking to his mother, and his mother says something which is probably my favorite line in the whole damn movie, that everyone fails at who they're supposed to be. And I think that's where we end up putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, is like we feel we're supposed to be this kind of person in this kind of way, and when we're not, we beat ourselves up over it. But we're not perfect. We're perfectly imperfect. And the most important relationship you have in this life is with yourself. So you need to be good to yourself and for yourself, so that way you can be not only good, hate to repeat myself, but not only to be good for yourself, but to be good to others. She also advises to stop fighting your PMDD and just roll with it. Accept that you have it, honor your body, which I think is a great approach in any way that one chooses to treat their PMDD, like whether you want to go the medication route or not, whatever you choose. Overcoming PMDD starts with being good to yourself and having that self-awareness. And, relating to self-awareness, one tip she offers is to write down goals or things that make you happy, because it's important to remember those. Everyone, not just people with PMDD, we get caught up in this rat race of life and being who we think we need to be. And we need to learn to slow down and be present, but even more so during PMDD time. And it helps to be mindful and ask yourself what you need right now in that moment to feel better. And that's something I've been trying to do as well. Say I'm feeling anxious, having that anxiety, that irritability. It's like, okay, what do I need right now that'll make me feel better? Do I just need to get into a room by myself for a couple minutes? Do I need to have a piece of chocolate? Whatever that may be, I need to be present and figure that out. And I get that. For me, trying to think of the big picture and how to get rid of or ease my symptoms for the rest of my life feels like a daunting and almost impossible task. But taking it as a small chunk, like symptom by symptom, day by day, hour by hour, however I need to break it down, I can practice stopping in that moment and asking myself, what do I need and how I can help myself? Maybe it's writing a journal entry, maybe it's having a piece of cake. I'm sure it's going to vary each time. And she does also advise finding ways to channel the rage, anxiety, and depression into strength, calm, and control. And it sounds difficult when thinking about it, like mid PMDD, when you just want to fucking punch someone in the face or kick a window out of the car or something. Like, it's going to be difficult to stop and, like, how can I put this, in a positive way? But I don't think it's impossible. So this book is about relationships, right? And in this world that we live in now, where people text just about damn near everything, that can sometimes present challenges. And I'm 100% on board with the author in her statement that you don't build relationships by texting. There are times when you have to learn to put down the phone, put down that keyboard, and have a face-to-face conversation with others. And if not that, at least a phone call where you can hear each other's voices, because you can never tell tone from a text or email, and that can cause misunderstandings. Like, I can't even count the times that we get emails at work, myself and other coworkers, and we read it one way, but, I've kind of gotten into practice and kind of become an advocate for the sender. Like, you know what? Maybe they didn't even mean it like that. Maybe it was just a flat out sentence, a factual sentence, whatever it may be, and it wasn't like finger pointing or you're doing really crap at your job or anything like that. Because we don't know tones in texts or emails unless the person were to write, like, in a sarcastic tone, blah, 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 which is ridiculous. And the author also makes a point that you want to know what your boundaries are in relationships. You want to make them as clear as possible as you can and respect those boundaries, and hopefully others will respect them as well. And with your partners, you want someone that can not only be supportive, but know how to support you. Someone who knows whether you're going to need quiet time, be alone, need a hug, whatever you need, whether they pick up on a nonverbal clue from you, whether you've talked things out before, like, when you see me do this, please do this for me, or don't do that for me. Or, you can just tell them, like, I need this, or this is how you can support me. And one thing I really like that the author said she does with her husband is having code phrases to convey when her PMDD symptoms were coming, or already in progress. And that's something she advises as a tip as well. And some of the examples she provided, as a code phrase, was, I'm feeling fragile today. All I want is chocolate. I am having a sad day. But it can really be anything between you and your partner. It could be something funny. It doesn't have to be anything serious. Thinking of code phrases for periods. I mean, Aunt Flo is visiting, so if we have ridiculous phrases like that to say things, we could probably have something to say like, I need a moment alone, or, whatever. But the key thing, the huge thing is communication. Just talking about it, having it, whether you set up some safe word or not, like just talking is the huge thing. The most important note, though, is to never stay in a relationship because you are afraid no one else will want you. That is the PMDD being a bully and being a cranky bitch. If your partner is telling you no one else wants you, they're being a bully. There's another underlying issue going on there. And getting back into the focus of relationships in chapter 7, the author goes she offers tips about how to survive family gatherings. And some of the ones she offers are to lower your expectations. Not everything happens like a Hallmark movie. I know part of my own irritability can sometimes come from things not going exactly how I pictured in my head. And personally, that applies to like even non-PMDD times. If I already have in my head how I would like things to go or how I'm expecting them to, and they don't, like that will cause me stress. I will get upset. So I guess, it makes sense in a time when you're feeling more vulnerable to lower your expectations, like, and be okay with things not going how you thought they were going to, or how you wanted them to go. She also gave a tip on to set intentions and to have a good time before you get to your family gathering. Stay sober and arrive late and leave early. And along with that, also driving yourself, so that way you don't have to depend on other people. If you need to leave, if you need to take a moment or anything, that you can do so and not have to wait on someone else. So one part of the book where I have to respectfully disagree with the author is in the statement, quote, "So if you have someone in your life who doesn't understand PMDD, it's because they are choosing not to understand it," end quote. I'm sorry. There are many things I feel I can't understand for various reasons, and I feel that like that's not because I'm choosing not to understand it. It's because I just don't get it or can't get it, especially if it's related to like some sort of condition, whether it's physical or mental. If I don't have it, I'll never fully understand what it's like. And in regards to PMDD, I wouldn't expect someone to fully understand it, and that's okay. Like, I can talk my fiance, excuse me, my fiance's ear off about what it's like to have PMDD. I can tell him all the thoughts that I have, and he can understand me. He can sympathize, but I feel like he'll never really understand what it's like to have it. And I feel like people that can't get it, like they're not choosing not to understand it. Maybe in some cases that's, maybe that is true. In which case it's on that person for choosing not to understand something. But if someone can at least have an idea and maybe sympathize and be able to offer support, that alone, it's kind of a win to me. Like, I don't need to understand something to be able to be there for someone and to offer a shoulder to cry on, or, just my ears to listen to them. That doesn't change anything. Now, I didn't want to go chapter by chapter about this book because I didn't want to give, everything away, but I did want to touch on chapter 12, which is advice for partners of women with PMDD. And again, this author does have a book solely dedicated to that, but this is the chapter in the book that's more targeted towards partners. And at first I didn't plan to list these out, but then I thought maybe there is someone out there listening to this that is maybe wanting to help someone with PMDD but can't discreetly get the book or some other scenario, for whatever reason. So I thought it best to cover them, so in case someone does need this information, it's out there for them to hear it if they can't get their hands on the book, can't get the same information from the web or whatever. So one piece of advice is to make notes, like on a calendar or something, when it's your partner's premenstrual time. Might be something difficult to do if you don't directly ask, or if it's not marked in some sort of like communal calendar, but that's one of the tips. Also, stay clear and try not to come to your partner with questions that need some thought and consideration, like big purchases, any financial decisions, vacation plans, things like that. Like I've often shared before, often when my fiance asks me to decide on dinner when I'm PMDDing, like I can feel like where I want to burst into tears and just bawl my eyes out because I can't decide. It feels like I can not physically or mentally decide what to freaking eat. And that I think is more what angers me and just makes me feel like losing my shit, really. Is losing that ability just to make a simple decision. So something as simple as that can set me off. I can only imagine, like, if we were trying to plan a vacation, or like now, we're planning our wedding, to make big decisions like that during a PMDD time when I'm feeling that way, like that would just be insane. Another tip is to be patient. And that's something I've stressed as well too, just personally. And not only just for partners, but for anyone who's involved with someone suffering from PMDD, like family and even coworkers and friends. Another tip is don't enable immature or abusive behavior. If your partner is yelling, cursing, throwing stuff, don't do it back. Don't lose your temper. Just walk away so you'll talk after they've calmed down or have had some space. That's probably one of the worst things I think anyone can do in any kind of scenario is acting out or reacting in anger, getting caught in the emotion, because you're often probably going to say something that you don't really mean. And it's just in the heat of the moment and the heat of the emotion where you just kind of say things. And it's, I think we've all kind of said something we regret in an argument, and it's hard to take that back. Another tip is if your partner with PMDD is calm and talking, actively listen, even if it doesn't make sense, and then ask how you can help. I think it's more challenging to ask someone like mid PMDD and like, how can I help you? What do you need from me? Because at that time, we may not even freaking know. Like our thoughts are just irrational. They're all over the place. Like I think we need to be asked those questions during a non-PMDD time when we're able to think more clearly and be able to focus and be able to have a better dialogue about things. Another tip, I've also shared this before too, is to not take things personally. I mean, that is the freaking title of my podcast. Like, it's not you, it's me. It's nothing you did. It's nothing you're doing. You're just living your life. But the PMDD it has a way of making us zone in on things like you were chewing too loudly, or the way you're breathing is freaking like angering. And those irrational thoughts it makes us feel kind of crazy. But don't take it personally. And be compassionate with your partner. Like we were just talking about, you may not be able to understand it. Like, doctors are barely kind of comprehending and getting their brains around what PMDD is and everything. And, you don't need to understand it to come from a place of compassion and care. And at the same time, you also want to be forgiving and reassuring, but not patronizing, which can also probably be a trigger for a lot of PMDD sufferers. And there was this great example in the book that to a PMDD brain, an irrational argument of who walked the dog or who took out the trash last could totally make or break a relationship. And yes, that sounds ridiculous. That sounds crazy, but that's what PMDD does. And there are chapters in this book with reader feedback and comments because this originally started as a website before it became a book. And there were actually 4 chapters for reader comments. Personally, I think it would have been okay with just 1, but that's just my opinion. Like, I don't feel I needed 4 chapters about that. But anyway, I feel a lot of them just flat out sucked. So bear with me because I wanted to touch a little bit on some of these. So there was one comment from a reader suggesting to video record their partner's PMDD episodes over a few months and then show it to them because, quote, Being emotionally, verbally, and physically assaulted by a woman with PMDD is still abuse, end quote, abuse, sorry, and shouldn't be tolerated. First of all, yeah, I agree things shouldn't be tolerated like that, but it's not like we're coming from a place of malice. And first of all, if someone came at me with videos to show me how I'm being when I'm PMDDing, I would say you can go fuck yourself. I know I'm being ridiculous, bitchy, curt, not a ray of sunshine, but there is a reason, and that is completely different than someone being abusive toward their partner because they're flat out an abusive asshole. Sorry, that's just my feeling. And there were also multiple comments of partners saying that they were tired of being the target and didn't know how much more they could take, meaning, of the attitudes and everything from their partners with PMDD. And maybe I'm living in a fantasy world, but if you love someone, like truly love and care for someone, wouldn't you be there to support them no matter what? In sickness and in health, right? For better or worse? I mean, you can't just go along with things or be in a relationships when everything's great, because nothing is always great all the time. There are going to be rough patches, and sometimes couples go through hell and they come out of it. But I mean, to me, jumping ship when you don't know how to handle your partner, or things seem kind of rough, like that's just, it seems to me that's taking the easy way out. And there were even a couple comments basically saying that if you see signs of PMDD in your partner, to run before you become engulfed in it and are doomed to a life of hell. Like, wow, really? I wasn't even sure how to feel about that. Like, I was reading through these comments. It's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, wow, run, just run. Like, that upset me so much I couldn't even figure out how to put it into words. But I will say this, don't let this discourage you. Those partners that stay and help and don't see being with someone with PMDD as a life of hell are out there, and those are the ones to keep. And personally, I feel like if someone were to have had that kind of reaction to me, like, fine, get the hell out then. If I were to have developed, say, cancer, and you had to be there for me through the sickness, depression, the vomiting from the chemotherapy, and being angry about why this happened to me, would that be a life of hell? Would that make someone want to bail too? We can't help the cards that we're dealt with in life, but we can try to make the best hand as possible. And on a more positive note, there are 20 helpful tips for partners on how to help and offer support, like doing what you can to help keep stressful situations to a minimum, not to tease, helping to find a doctor that understands PMDD, just kind of these basic little things that can mean so much to someone. And also advising empathy, asking partners to think about how they would feel having this disconnect between their brain and mouth, leading to saying harmful things about loved ones. Like, sometimes it's not until you put it into a different perspective that you can get someone to better, see what it's like, or to at least somewhat sympathize. And also thinking about how they would feel about the physical discomforts. Like, how would you feel if your breasts were tender, 2 weeks or something out of every month, and you're getting cramps and migraines and all this crap that comes with PMDD. Another thing I agreed on with the author is that PMDD is an explanation, but never an excuse. And that was something I had said to my coworkers when I gave my little PMDD presentation at one of our staff teaching sessions, is that I wasn't bringing the information to them as an excuse for my behavior, as an excuse for me being rude. I just wanted them to try to have a better understanding, or at least know where it was coming from. And again, so that way they wouldn't take things personally. And the book wraps up with advice about managing and preparing for PMDD episodes. It touches on stress and PMDD. There's a little discussion about the author's thoughts on medications, and she talks about PMDD's relations to serotonin, and she ends it with an open letter to her readers. So overall, I thought the book was great. While it's not as science or medically based as the PMDD phenomenon or a guide to coping, it still delivers a great great information from a woman who has lived with PMDD and did some research. And like I said at the beginning, it was just like sitting down with a friend, like at a coffee shop, talking about everything and, just hearing her out. And it presented info and her perspective in a very simple and super honest way. And I think if I were to meet someone who had just been diagnosed with PMDD or thinks they might have it or wants advice on what to do with their partner with PMDD, how to help them, how to, I don't want to say handle things because that just sounds not right. But, wanting to know how they can be supportive, I think this would be a helpful book for both partners and those suffering with it. And one message that the author, I think it was kind of overarching from start to end, was that it's nearly impossible to control when PMDD hits, but you can control your reaction to it. And that's something I'm still learning myself as well in this journey is I know it happens. I can't help it, but I can help how I react to it. I can either let it ruin my damn day, or I could try to spin it and learn from it, try to make it positive, try to take that energy, into somewhere that's beneficial or productive. And that's what it is. It's a journey, this whole thing. And I think we're all kind of going through that. And that's something that we share. And that's something that I have loved in finding this PMDD community. So again, I want to thank you all for coming back for another episode. I'm sorry for that. It took me a while to get it out. I'm still trying to figure out my schedule and how I can get things out, but we'll hopefully have more episodes coming out regularly again. Getting back to my research because I try to at least once a day to either Google or like search on Twitter, like what's new in the world of PMDD and what people are saying, what people are feeling. So that way I can try to gear episodes towards what everyone is interested in, what people would like more information on. But again, just hopefully this information helps, even if it's just letting you know that you're not alone in this. You're definitely not the only one. There are a lot of us out there, and we're still, I think, finding our ways to each other. And when we do, it's really great to see everyone have each other's backs and be there for everyone. And, just to get on my morality horse here, I think if we could do that all as human beings in general, just be there for each other, that would make the world so much better and a better place to be in. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk again next time. Bye.